1, just in case you didn't get the note, there are now 3 tracks in the conference, so different tracks to choose from. I'd like you to welcome our next speaker, Dave Williams. He's an IT architect at Bull. He works in the UK. He's been using Nagios since it was called NetSaint, and he's a really experienced, long-time user. So he's got a lot of experience under his belt, and he's going to talk today about, Nagios in the real world, the data center, how to use different add-ons to come up with a solution that works for you. So, thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Lee. Thank you. First, the good news. Someone's turned up, so I'm impressed by that. Next comes the bad news. You'll have worked out that I don't come from these parts, so sometimes I will say words that you may not understand. Shout at me. Let's do that. All good presentations. We'll start with an agenda. I may or may not stick to it, but you've been warned. Introduction, where I come from, why I think I should be talking to you about what I'm talking to you about. You may disagree, of course. Example implementations. The implementations that started a few years ago in the UK. We did a number of consultancy runs, put a lot of equipment in, put a lot of software in, and came up with some interesting solutions. One of the lessons learned, as we'll go through, is that you may put this product in for one reason, but it seems to perform a different function. We'll see. Then we'll move on to data center monitoring. Close to my heart. I've just spent 2 years of my life building a new data center, from design to project management to implementation to migration. Nagios was the chosen tool to monitor that data center in terms of environment. So this is looking at big things. Well, I think big things. 1 or 2 megawatts of generator, HV, electricity, air conditioning units, everything really. So we'll see what all the tools that I had to stick together in order to make it work, and the kind of vision that it came out with. And at the end it says conclusions. I have some, got some hints as well. So let's see how we go. This is what's gloriously described as my ego slide. This is where I came from. UK based, I'm still living there. Worked on Honeywell mainframes, IBM mainframes, at the level of actually started work cutting assembler code, and that's a tough job. And moved up to operating system maintenance, etc. Onto Unix, HP UX, AIX, Solaris, networking, CaseKit, 3Com, Cisco. I work for Bull. Bull Information Systems. Bull is a French computer manufacturer. Yes, there is one out there. We still actually make circuit boards and stick them in boxes and put our badge on the outside. Quite often we put our badge on the outside of someone else's, but that's another story. And we still make mainframes, believe it or not. Unix boxes, power-based. HPC systems, high-performance computing, so we're talking 4,000, 8,000 processors in a couple of cabs, which has its own issues, but needs to be managed. Security products and managed services. In terms of system monitoring, you may have noticed, by the way, from the pictures that I thought I was going to one St Paul's and I've come to another. But I started out using HP OpenView. Everybody has to make a mistake. That was mine. It was used to do some really strange things. And it was a big learning exercise. Simple requirements. In those days, as you can tell, it was a while ago, I had a lot of dial-in lines, hundreds of dial-in lines that users came into a mainframe system on. Some of them didn't work. Trying to find out which one didn't work was a problem. And after extreme amounts of butchery, I managed to get OpenView to test overnight to tell me which strokes on which particular phone lines weren't working. Took a lot of effort. Then I was cursed with NetView because I was a IBM SE and I had to use it to monitor stuff in the SNA world. And then my own company, Bull, produced their own product that looked a lot like OpenView, except it was even more complicated and less user-friendly, called OpenMaster. So about that point in time, I had enough and started casting around for something better. And I bumped into NetSaint on AIX. My orientation at that time was I was using AIX systems with HP UX, and that's the way I was searching, and I found the first port by a guy called Chris Rothchecker from Alaska, as it turned out. And he made it work. He'd actually got it to compile clean. So I thought, that's a good thing, I'll try that. And so my first view of Nagios was using a Mosaic web browser on an enormous X terminal, peaking at NetSaint 6, and thought, that's not bad. I can do better than that though. So I actually took the port, played with the port, and eventually produced an installable file that's knowing, well, pretty public use, published on our freeware site, that an ALX user can just say install Nagios, and it happens. It pops up, goes in, it installs all the dependencies, it makes users, makes groups, puts GD on, and the end result is Apache leaps up and, hey, it's there. And that was Nagios. And having spent all this time doing this on my company's dollar, so to speak, we then got to the point of, why did I do it? And the answer was, we can sell this. We can't sell the product, obviously, against the nature of the product, and more than I would want to do. But we can sell consultancy services around it. And so we had a push in the UK to see where we could go. First example, Crown Office Procurator Fiscal Service, which is people who take you to court on the side of the government in Scotland. They do these things. They investigate deaths, complaints against the police. They had 2 IT locations, Glasgow and Edinburgh. This is about 85 miles apart. They have a Windows server in every court of justice in Scotland. They run the case management service in an Oracle database written and maintained by themselves with a replicated copy at the other location. So, quite simple, quite straightforward. Only if it listens. They're already using SolarWinds to look at their network. So there didn't seem to be much reason for using Nagios. But they had a strategy that said that their major reporting systems must run under AIX. So we went to competitive tender. And the nice thing was, we had to compete. We had to install Nagios, get it to monitor the systems, pull data, graph things, look at the Oracle databases, and see how well it did it. Well, it did it very well. After 2 days, we were pulling data from every court in the land, and after 3 days, not only that, we were pulling meaningful data out of their Oracle systems as well. It kind of became a no contest. The other guys just about managed to get their stuff to load up under AIX in 3 days. So what do we get? 60 Windows servers, monitor for the disk utilization, 2 AIX servers, and these are fairly big boys, and literally they were big. Monitor for CPU, Oracle instances, DB space alerts. Because of the nature of their caseload, shall we say, occasionally things would happen very quickly and they get a lot of incidents, which used to fill up their systems. They went to the expense of putting a lovely display screen in, and we sent out text alerts to people when things were going wrong, which caused no end of trouble, and it's a point I'll come back to later on in the presentation, because people were used to sleeping at night, not being told at 4 o'clock in the morning that their DB spaces were within 3% of filling up, but they'd best do something about it. It would have helped if the management had told the support people that was going to happen. That was done in 2005, and it's still there. It just works. There's another one of these case in points that once it's installed and it's ticking over, it just works. While it was installed, we put in a few bits and pieces to basically provide a backstop for SolarWinds. So Nagios also supervises the collection of data from all the switches, routers in their network, produces those lovely graphs, just to try and help them out a bit, because they did. There's no reasonable choice SolarWinds, but they did it anyway. Now this is a completely different end of the spectrum and the end of the country, as it happens. This little red bit in the middle, that is Rother, between Dover and Portsmouth, I suppose, is the closest you'll get. It's a council. It's a small council. Its responsibility is mainly emptying the rubbish bins, making sure that houses aren't built where they're not supposed to be, and keeping the streets clean. But it still has its problems, it still has its systems, and it's still governed by central government. So they were looking for something to help them see what was going on in their systems that didn't cost them a lot of money. I mean, the focus here is they didn't have much money.